States. It's Mark from the United States.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Mark from the States. How we doing today? I'm doing fantastic. I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate each of you who decided to come hang out with me today. Today we're going to look at HMS Queen Elizabeth. Of course, we've seen many videos that deal with this wonderful aircraft carrier. But I just love watching videos with you, and every time I watch something with all of you, I'm always learning something new about this wonderful, wonderful ship. So I'm expecting the exact same result today. I'm going to learn in the video, and then I'm going to learn after, as a lot of you who have a lot of knowledge about this sort of thing always seem to improve my understanding. So thank you to all of you. You guys are amazing. London book, today's passage. Gonna need my glasses for this. This is about the tea. Twinings, is it Twinings? Twinnings? I'm gonna go Twinings. It's probably need to be corrected. Maybe I got it right. I don't know. This is about royal warrants and Twinings. That's what I'm going with today. If I'm saying it wrong, please let me know. In a city where commerce is king, shops need to do all they can to stand out. Royal warrants of appointment have been given out since the 15th century. It's amazing. To businesses that supply a royal court or person. In the 18th century, these businesses started displaying their royal warrant, usually incorporating the royal coat of arms to assure passers-by of their quality. There are currently over 800, it's a lot, 800 royal warrant holders in the country, including Twinings on Strand, that received its first from Queen Victoria in 1837, when she appointed Twinings as tea supplier to her household. It has been renewed by each monarch since you can see, and let me reread that. It has been renewed by each monarch since, and you can see the royal coat of arms over the entrance to their shop on Strand, where the business was first established in 1706. 1706. That's incredible. This is the part that really gets me right here. The Twinings logo is thought to be the oldest continuously used logo in the world. It has not changed since 1787. Wow. Here's a picture here. That is incredible. The oldest continuously used logo in the world. Not changed since 1787. Wow. I thought that was kind of a fun fact. I'm sure a lot of you probably already knew that. If I'm saying Twinings wrong, and it's actually Twinnings, let me know. Let me know if I'm saying it right. Today we are going to get into the video. This is by, is it MEGAPROJECTS, I think? Anyway, it's you know who it is. Please go support their channel. They're going to be in the description, of course. Go support, do the things you guys love. It's incredible stuff that they put out. I enjoy it. Simon, there's a love-hate relationship, I think, with a lot of people with him. I enjoy him. And I'm going to learn more about HMS Queen Elizabeth today, so let's do it.
Alongside arguably only nuclear weapons, aircraft carriers are the hot ticket item that any major military power craves more than any other, as they have the ability to be plonked anywhere on the globe and reduce anything that either its captain or the politician paying his mortgage happen to find irksome to rubble. Currently, a mere 10 nations operate true carriers, those capable of operating fixed-wing aircraft, with a further 6 operating still impressive but undeniably lesser helicopter carriers, and among these nations, one in particular does stand out. It was the UK who invented aircraft carriers all the way back in 1918, when whoever was wearing the big shiny hat at the time smashed a ceremonial bottle of champagne over the bow of HMS Argus, the first ever true aircraft carrier, and pushed her out to sea for the first time. Well, since then, despite some stiff competition from some new kids on the block here and there, they've remained the pioneers of the type, operating them more or less constantly since that fateful day. The latest addition to this lineage, most lofty, is the Queen Elizabeth class, a pair of top-of-the-line carriers that have Blighty's baddies quaking in their boots as they are reminded that Britannia still rules the waves, or well, so patriotic headlines would have you believe, because, well, others hold quite the opposite opinion, that they're actually complete junk, a colossal waste of taxpayers' pounds that have little strategic utility and are about as much real use as a chocolate teapot. Today, we're going to be getting to the bottom of the matter as we explore their history, design, and above all else, the reasons that some hold them in such poor regard. So let's get cracking.
Go support this channel. Here we go.
The decision to construct the Queen Elizabeth class, the largest warships ever built for the Royal Navy, was announced in July 2007, with the contract being signed in July 2008. Intended to replace the Invincible class, a class of 3 1970s vintage carriers that come at the noughties were ironically anything but invincible, the Queen Elizabeth class was to be a significant upgrade in size, capability, and versatility, as well as being capable of deploying the mighty F-35 Lightning II. HMS Queen Elizabeth, the leadership of the class, and HMS Prince of Wales had an initial budget of just over £4 billion for the pair, but given the often undersold nature of British military procurement, this soon rocketed up to just over £7.5 billion come 2019. It's apparently gotten even heavier since then too, but more recent figures are hard to come by.
Not cheap.
The construction process of these ships was a nationwide effort and involved multiple shipyards across the UK. For Queen Elizabeth, her construction began in 2009, with major sections of the ship being built in 6 different shipyards and assembled in Rosyth Dockyard in Scotland. This work took a fair old while, and she was eventually commissioned in December 2017. Prince of Wales shared a similar construction story, with her construction starting in 2021 and also taking 8 years, with her being commissioned in November 2019. Both displace approximately 72,000 tons and have a length of just under 300 meters, figures that put them at just under 3 times the displacement of the Invincible class that they replaced. And it also just nudges them into the supercarrier category. Being such big girls, they naturally carry a not inconsiderable air wing, consisting of up to 24 F-35s under normal circumstances and up to 36 in more extreme cases, alongside a cheeky few supplementary Merlin helicopters to serve in both the utility and airborne early warning roles. For context, this is roughly a third of the number of aircraft that the American Gerald R. Ford, the current king of carriers, can carry, but note that the Ford also displaces nearly 30,000 tons more than a Queen Elizabeth carrier. To help get all of that in the air, the Queen Elizabeth class utilizes a large flight deck equipped with a ski jump and has no catapult capabilities, as you may initially assume a carrier of its size would. And do remember that detail because it's important later. As for defense, both ships are equipped with 3 20mm Phalanx close-in weapon systems that provide both anti-aircraft and anti-missile coverage at short range, as well as 4 30mm DS-30M Mark II automated small caliber guns and an array of 12.7mm M2 Browning machine guns for defense against surface threats. All of these are hooked up to an advanced sensor and radar suite that includes the advanced Artisan 3D radar and S1850M long-range radar, which allow them to operate at peak efficiency and, touch wood, afford the ships a half-decent level of protection. Power comes from 2 Rolls-Royce Marine Trent MT30 gas turbines and 4 diesel generator sets driving 2 electric motors. It is not nuclear-powered, as people might initially suspect.
And I was one of those people. I don't know if I knew that. This whole time I thought, at least I like to think that I thought, that it had nuclear power. Wow, okay, that's going to cut down on, yeah, wow, okay. I'm trying to think if I knew that. And for whatever reason, I don't believe I did. I always thought they were nuclear powered. Interesting.
This setup affords a top speed of over 25 knots, which notably is a bit slower than other diesel-powered supercarriers such as the Chinese Fujian, which boasts a top speed of give or take 30 knots, and similarly is...
Yeah, but that thing ain't operational. I mean, it's just for show. It really is. It is literally the best it can do is it'd be a floating airport. It is not military, like, ready. And it won't be for a while.
It's also slower than most nuclear-powered supercarriers, with the American Gerald R. Ford and Nimitz class capable of hitting roughly 30 knots. Queen Elizabeth quickly moved into a rigorous phase of operational testing and training following her commissioning. By February 2018, all appeared well, and she was then moved to the first phases of operational training, which included initial sea training programs, heavy weather testing, and helicopter certification processes. This period also saw her first overseas port visit to Gibraltar. This was certainly a most triumphant situation, but it was more than just a glory cruise, as the jaunt was also used to test her integrated systems during longer voyages.
What a cool photo. Hot dang. Look at that. That is awesome. It just gives me the goosebumps. That is so cool. Look at that.
More than just a glory cruise, as the jaunt was also used to test her integrated systems during longer voyages and to also conduct her first ever replenishment at sea, something her crew had to get their heads around were she ever to be a serious deployable military asset. Then in the autumn of 2018, she embarked on her first significant deployment, Westland 18, a training exercise that took her across the Atlantic and saw her put her first planes into the sky, as well as practice her interoperability with allied NATO forces, particularly the Americans. All in all, this went well enough. No planes crashed, and the Americans seemed chuffed enough with her performance. What more could Her Majesty want from the Navy? As for Prince of Wales, she started undergoing sea trials in April 2021 and achieved full operational status in October 2021. She then participated in an international exercise off the coast of Scotland. This exercise was notable for involving joint operations of both Queen Elizabeth-class carriers, and once again, things seemed to go fine. No disasters, no stress, no bother. 2021 would be a landmark year for the Queen Elizabeth as she embarked on a maiden operational deployment known as Carrier Strike Group 21 or CSG-21. This deployment took her across the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean, and into the Indo-Pacific region, where she partook in a series of diplomatic visits and joint exercises with partner nations. This included operations and exercises with the US, Japan, India, and several other countries. The piece de resistance of Queen Elizabeth's actions as part of CSG-21, however, would be her actions against ISIS as part of Operation Shader, the UK's contribution to the US's own Operation Inherent Resolve, their war against ISIS. Operating in the Mediterranean and the Middle East, the carrier's air wing conducted a series of precision strikes against ISIS targets. These operations were aimed at degrading ISIS's capabilities and supporting coalition ground forces, and were significant not just for that, but also for being the only time that a Queen Elizabeth carrier has launched its planes in anger so far. All in all then, this doesn't sound too bad, does it? Pretty standard stuff. So why do some call the Queen Elizabeth class a boondoggle? Well, stay tuned, because in the footnotes of that overview lies a whole other potential story, one that is, well, just a bit worse.
There's always going to be critics.
Where did it all go wrong? How did a class of ships with a performance seemingly so adequate, if not outright good on paper, come to be swamped in controversy? Well, the first criticism was financial, as many believed that the UK simply cannot afford supercarriers. This might sound odd at first, because after all, the country is the 6th richest on Earth by nominal GDP. But such a figure, which is often selectively chosen by patriotic yet blinkered analysts, hides an uncomfortable reality. The country's economy is fucked. And there's no other way to say it. This becomes apparent if one steps away from GDP and takes a look at some other economic indicators, chief among which is poverty, which is currently exploding in the UK. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation, a very old charity that conducts and funds research aimed at solving poverty in the UK, paints a rather bleak picture of this, highlighting the fact that over 22% of the British population now lives in poverty, which includes 8.1 million working-age adults, 4.2 million children, and 2.1 million pensioners. What's worse, due to the interesting way the British economy has been managed in recent years, the Foundation estimates that this figure is only going to get worse in the coming years, with them estimating that come the close of this year, 12 million adults will live in poverty. Such figures are just the tip of the iceberg, however.
We know poverty over here too, big time. A huge issue. Our inflation's terrible. Our economy's not great. Yeah, I feel you.
As hidden within those figures, according to the Foundation, are 6 million people in so-called deep poverty, which they define as earning below 40% of the median income. Further still is destitution, defined as a state in which one is not able to meet their most basic physical needs to stay warm, dry, clean, and fed. Currently in the UK, by Foundation figures, 3.8 million people, including 1 million children, live in that state. Given this, many pundits in both the UK and abroad, and we suspect many of you in the audience now, question how the hell the country can stand to put the cash up for two such expensive military toys when the home front, so to speak, is in such dire straits. I mean, you could feed a lot of hungry children with that money. But criticism of the Queen Elizabeth class goes beyond just fiscal prudence, as
We get a lot of the same questions. I'm not going to call it criticisms. They're valid questions. But a lot of people, of course, we spend 800 billion or whatever we spend a year on the military. And yeah, of course, we could solve. Could we, though? Are we going to solve? What, are we going to just give everybody money and expect them to be able to do with it as, the right way and get themselves out of it, or are we just going to pay for everybody to get out of homelessness? A lot of these people have medical issues so that need to be addressed. There's so many layers to the homeless problem. I'm not smart enough to even contemplate how to fix it. But yeah, we do get a lot of people here also saying the same thing. We spend so much on military and this, that, and the other, and we could use it for, but you could, we spent a lot of money. We've sent a lot of money to Ukraine, that could have been used here in the States. That's a thing that people say. So you could apply it to so many different things that the government spends money on and say, if we only could have used that to solve this problem, Personally, I think you need those aircraft carriers. That's my opinion. It could be wrong, and a lot of you could disagree with it, and that's fine. That is okay. But I think being who you are as top dog in the region, many will probably have differences of opinion on who's top dog in the region, but no matter what, the UK, Britain, England, people look to you in that part of the world to lead. And you need something, personally, I think, to show, hey, we're capable of leading. And, but it can be a touchy subject for some, and that's fine. It's worth having the debate as far as I'm concerned. But that's just how I believe. Again, coming from someone who's not smart at all.
there are many that argue that they aren't even that good as carriers and represent a massive waste of money, regardless of the amount of starving children currently trying to survive in the land that the ships call home. One major such criticism has been over a supposed vulnerability to advanced anti-ship missiles, particularly those developed and fielded by nations such as Russia and China. These missiles, designed to evade radar detection and penetrate defense systems, pose a significant threat. The carrier's primary defense against such threats is their escort ships, with onboard countermeasures such as the Phalanx close-in weapon system that we discussed earlier playing a secondary role. It has no defensive missiles. One problem with that approach is that the UK doesn't really have escort ships, not enough anyway, which has severely limited the Royal Navy's ability to deploy the carriers. And do note also, a modern carrier lacking ship defense missiles is not normal. The Gerald R. Ford, for example, has both RAM-162 and RAM-116 defensive missile launching systems for handling inbound aircraft and missiles before its escorts even have to get involved. And just to really drive this point home, it actually isn't particularly normal for older carriers either. The USS Nimitz, commissioned all the way back in 1975, also carries RAM-116 rams in addition to RAM-7 launchers, and the Charles de Gaulle, a French carrier commissioned back in 2001, which isn't even a super carrier, sports both Aster-15 and Mistral missile launchers. This one really is a head-scratcher. You gotta think, when everyone else is incorporating defensive missiles, maybe it'd be a good idea.
He's got a point.
And speaking of things the UK can't afford, F-35s, the plane that is meant to fly off the carriers. Bear in mind, as we discussed earlier, each carrier can take 36 of them in total if they really squeeze them in. The Royal Navy surely must have acquired at least 72 of them in the last 17 years since the carrier's construction was announced. Right? Well, let's answer that by playing a little game. Take a moment to think and have a guess at how many you think they've got. Got a number in your head?
I'm gonna go 50.
Oh, good. We can reveal that the UK currently has 30 F-35s. 30 is not even enough to fully stock a single carrier to its absolute maximum, and it's just enough to fill a single carrier to its nominal complement. Bear in mind, too, we said the UK has 30 F-35s, not the Royal Navy. This wasn't a slip of the tongue on our part, that's how many the whole country has, so that number is also shared with the RAF, and we mean literally shared, as the Ministry of Defense regularly swaps its F-35s around between branches depending on which one is in most dire need. So bad is the F-35 situation, in fact, that on every deployment the Queen Elizabeth has been on, the Americans have had to lend some of theirs just to be able to put it to sea with even a minimum complement. This sounds pretty ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, how could a major developed military power blunder so catastrophically? Well, at least there's precedent, because regular viewers of this channel will be aware of how uniquely terrible the UK has always been when it comes to matters of military procurement. After all, this is the nation that willingly destroyed a top-of-the-line indigenous fighter, the TSR-2, just to get allegedly scammed by General Dynamics for a deal on F-111s that was too good to be true. They sent their troops into Iraq in functionally unarmored Land Rovers and issued a helmet, the Mark 6, that prevented its wearer from aiming their rifle while prone if they happened to be wearing body armor. The UK really does not have a good track record with this.
He's being pretty harsh, and I know a lot of you will have your choice words about this. It's not unique to your country. He mentions the F-111. That terrible, but you can go in the U.S. history just with all the just horrible ideas. You can probably go in France's history, Germany's history, obviously, of just all the terrible decisions that politicians have made or people who high up in the military have made. He of course is just talking about the UK, but it is not a unique UK thing, right? It's every country has gone through it. Now, the United States maybe be in a better position financially because we spend basically every penny that we have spare on the military, right or wrong. That they can, if for instance, let's take this would be like the Sherman in World War II. Now, granted, the Sherman technologically wasn't as advanced as, say, the German Tiger or whatever was the thing they were facing on the battlefield at that time, or even the British equivalent. But they had numbers. So when in doubt, if it's not as good, throw 8 times more of them at you. That was kind of the strategy, right? That's what I've been learning anyway, watching all these videos. It has its things, but one-on-one generally is not gonna work out too well for the Sherman. But the fact that you got 40 of them coming at you, you're just it's overwhelmed by numbers, right? So, yeah, we being the U.S. Military, they have their shares of this, so you can't be too hard on. And it takes time. It does take time, and I believe that over time it'll. I still think you should go forward with it, and that's my opinion. And I could be totally wrong here. And I'm not trying to start an argument or anything, but I'm just saying, even a vessel that had 15 F-35s on each, and yes, so there's some loners, big deal. You'll get there. I got to believe that. And because, the U.S. needs you. The U.S. needs you. So, and like I said earlier, the UK needs to be the leader of this side of the planet. So it'll get there. I got to believe that.
This stuff. And look, while we're on the topic of things the Queen Elizabeth class should have but doesn't, let's talk about catapults. The decision to completely forego catapults of either the traditional steam variety or the newer electromagnetic sort was influenced by one thing and one thing alone. And you know exactly what that issue was, because this is British military procurement we're talking about. It's money. Instead, the Queen Elizabeth class uses a good old-fashioned ski jump. Bear in mind too, steam catapults aren't exactly an alien technology to Britain. They have been using the technology since 1953, when they first fitted one to the HMS Perseus. The absence of catapults on these carriers is a major limitation. This isn't like a nuclear versus turbine propulsion, with merits both ways depending on how you look at it. No, not having catapults is an objective detriment. Without catapults, carriers are severely limited on the types of planes they can carry and the payloads of the planes that they can launch. A prime example of this, the F-35C, the proper vertical takeoff capable F-35 that also has a greater fuel capacity, combat radius and payload capacity than the F-35B that the Royal Navy ended up with. Well, they could have had that instead. But alas, using that variant really means you have to have a catapult to use it to its maximum potential. So, no, didn't work well, but at least, they saved a few quid. There are plans afoot to retrofit the Queen Elizabeth class with catapults, however, which the Navy wanted from day one. And that is basically British military procurement. A person with loads of medals wants a thing, politician says it's too expensive, and they'll go for the other thing instead. The aforementioned medal-laden person points out why the other thing is stupid and won't work. The politician says we're doing it anyway, and then it inevitably turns out to be so the Ministry of Defense then spends more money correcting the problem than if they'd just done it correctly the first time around. And then there are the reliability issues. Worst plagued by these by far is Prince of Wales. In August 2022, she experienced issues related to her starboard propeller shaft, which halted its intended voyage across the Atlantic for exercises off the US eastern seaboard. Then in February 2024, when she was due to head off and replace her sister in Exercise Steadfast Defender, a large NATO exercise, her departure was delayed by almost a week due to reasons that we've yet to be informed about. These are just two examples. A Freedom of Information request released by the Ministry of Defense revealed that she has spent a total of 33% of her commission time in Portsmouth undergoing maintenance. We know that aircraft carriers are just a tad complicated and so require a bit more maintenance than a Toyota Corolla, but 33% of the time? For real? But while the Prince of Wales has been the most unreliable of the class by far, Queen Elizabeth hasn't exactly been without mechanical gremlins either, as she encountered a mechanical issue just days before her scheduled departure for a high-profile NATO exercise in February 2024 due to problems with a shaft coupling on the starboard propeller shaft.
This makes me think of the U.S. and when they put out that stealth ship, and I forget what it's called. It was supposed to be this total technological advanced and there's still maybe, I think, a couple of them still sailing, and they're actually retiring them because it just never could work right. They put all this money in, they greenlit a bunch of them. Gosh, what is it called? You're going to have to help me with it, but it's the one that supposedly looks, has the stealth angles to it. It has the front goes like this towards the ship instead of like this going through the water. It's like this going through the water. And did you get that? And it just never worked right. And they finally just said, screw it, we're done. We're not going to do it. But it always was having issues all the time. F-35, still having problems, I'm sure. But that was another thing. It eventually gets figured out, but it certainly becomes glaring when it's the two that you have. And all eyes are on Britain and its Navy because of just the, history and legend of the Royal Navy. All eyes are on anything that floats, and if it's not floating perfectly, it's going to get a lot of criticism, I imagine. So, I don't know. Chin up. I believe it'll all, once it gets all sorted out, these things are going to be some bad MFers out there. So just, it's going to cost money and time, unfortunately. But they'll get there.
So then, are the many arguments against the Queen Elizabeth class enough to warrant their damning, or does the strategic utility they provide despite these issues means that they were still a smart use of British taxpayer money? Well, we don't know yet, but with time, we'll find out.
Yes. So, I do believe, did I get that right? I do believe they'll get there. But yeah, nothing ever is, hey, this is when the military comes and says, or not so much the military, but whoever's building it says it's going to be $4 billion. It's going to cost you $8 billion in the long run. And it'll probably end up costing more than that by the time it's all said and done. But once these things are ready to go fully and without problems, they're going to be some of the best in the world. You have a history of that. So it's not all doom and gloom. You have a history of producing some of the greatest pieces of military equipment the world has ever seen. So I do not, it sucks having these problems and stuff like that. I get it. But I believe in the long run, they'll be some of the top aircraft carriers ever built in due time, and they may spur maybe something down the road to even be even better. So your history shows me that. So I'm not jumping off the cliff yet. I'm far away from the edge yet. I hope everybody's happy, healthy, and safe. This was interesting. Simon can be Mr. Doom and Gloom lots of times, but I appreciate him and his channel, so please go support this channel plus the numerous ones that he has. They're all really good and it's entertaining. I got an email into him and he hasn't responded, but they're pretty big, so maybe in due time. But I've actually sent a few emails to him, so we'll see if they respond. But good video. This was not what I was thinking it was going to be. This kind of went into, okay, there's problems with it. Okay. Yeah. Gosh, what is, I don't remember what that, if you remember the ship that I'm talking about from the U.S., it was basically a boondoggle. There's still like one or two still floating, I think, but they were going to build a ton of them. They were supposed to be this, cutting edge type thing. It didn't work at all, but I believe they're going to retire the one that are still floating. Anywho, have a great day, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye.
Mark from the States, it's Mark. Yeah.